then Tim Truman comes along. Now Tim and I worked on Grimjack, we worked on all kinds of stuff, and I rescued him from TSR. And he's a phenomenal talent. His influences are from the underground comics. Great guys like Greg Irons and Rand Holmes and stuff. And it was just such a wonderful look for independent comics. And the idea of getting Tim involved in DC was A, kind of cool, and B, make him some money. He'd get paid regularly. So he pitches to me this idea of a tribute to Carl Fox, but it was a reimagining of the character. And I'm thinking, well, okay, I'll let Giordano win one. And we went with it. We developed it. It was certainly the same sort of grim and gritty stuff that Tim's work was associated with. That phrase actually came out of the work on Grimjack. And it was very, very well received. It sold in the quarter billions. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Dollar value, it might have brought in more shekels than any other Hawkman appearance. But there was a large and very vocal group of fans who hated it because it contradicted all of their fantasies, their favorite Hawkman stories. Well, yeah, that's why we do reboots, and it's also pretty much why I didn't like reboots. But, you know, yeah, that was the purpose. So, sorry you don't like it, but, you know, and the book sold despite that, and it sold well enough that we could do a spin-off, a Hawkworld spin-off, which we did, but Tim wasn't really interested. He could contribute plotting ideas, and since he and John Ostrander had worked so well together on Grimjack, I naturally thought, well, okay, you two guys can work together, great, you know. Tim only wants to be involved a little bit, bring Johnny O in, and do it. And John was a master, probably still is, if they give him any work, of straightening out continuity flaws, which was a job that got more and more complicated every passing minute. And he did an adequate job of it, a good job of it in some cases, but the fans, that hardcore group of fans hated it because it wasn't one of the 6 previous versions of Hawkman. So we had some heat on that. The series, I thought, failed only in that the writer and the artist did not get along, and that was for political reasons. Graham Nolan is pretty much on a right-wing sort of guy, not hysterical idiot type, you know, I hasten to point out. And John is the exact opposite, and also, you know, not a hysterical idiot. But the two of them just couldn't get past that. For years, for a couple of years, we did that. And I thought the book didn't quite have the energy level, despite, you know, my effort. And I think that was because of the discordance between the two. Ultimately, it evolved. Hawkworld became Hawkman, which was more commercial, maybe, considering Hawkman never really worked 100% on his own anyway, so maybe not. But it was a good series, and that Hawkworld series was anthologized. You know, they came out with a trade paperback and all that. And, you know, Tim got another check, and that was terrific. And his work was spectacular. We did have one serious problem with that Hawkworld Prestige format series. Kike Katena, who was the inker, brilliant man, wonderful artist, swell guy, lived in Argentina. And Argentina exploded, and there was no more mail service from Argentina for a while due to the political pressures in Argentina. And we had that 3rd issue to come out. You know, the final issue of the miniseries, everybody wants to read it. Lord knows the retailers want to have it to sell. The distributors are on anything that ships late, and I don't blame them. We found a way to smuggle those last pages, I'm serious, through the help of Jerry Robinson, who was honored here in Baltimore about 10 years ago for his efforts in helping cartoonists who were in politically dangerous situations all across the world. Through his help, we got those pages smuggled out into the United States of America and to DC's offices. And that is cool. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
So we had Hawkworld, and that ended, and as I said, Hawkman got his own new series again, John writing it, Jan doing the art, which was glorious.
Yes.
And again, that faded out. And then we hit the 20th century with Hawkman. The 90s stuff was harsh, and by the time we got here, Hawkman was appearing in JSA. There really wasn't a whole lot of the K.R. Hall showing up. But then we got here, and Jeff Johns did his Hawkman, and when New 52 happened, there was the Savage Hawkman, which was, to me, difficult to navigate.
That's let's hear it for that.
But let's get to this. Where is Hawkman? And so Rob, when you started, you kind of got into it. What was your idea about what you said that Hawkman is the same character, the same being, is reincarnated across time and space and can overlap. And what was your, you had a goal, and you did an excellent job of sticking landing, but you got to your landing, you got to a landing point that had closure. When you were going there, what was the goal you were getting at?
Well, I guess to contradict something I said earlier, the only two things I knew about Hawkman was one, the visual from the Super Friends show, and second, that he had a reputation for being the most confusing character of all of comics.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that appealed to me because everybody has holes in their game. You know, there's definitely things that I'm not as good at as I would like to be as a writer. But one thing I feel like I am good at is I'm good with puzzle pieces. Whenever somebody dumps some puzzle pieces on my desk, like some crazy crossover or whatever, I can always find a way to fit it together. So by reputation, he seemed like the ultimate puzzle, you know? And so not only would it be a challenge to me, and I figured out that puzzle, but also it's an opportunity to put a stamp on a character, but really there aren't too many characters left that don't have that stamp, right? Like the Flash has had several stamps, you know, Batman's had 1 million stamps, but like Hawkman has had some defining runs, but not that one run that connected everything. And you can see how they tried to do it throughout the history of the character. They weren't able to do it. So it's like, if we could figure out, Brian and I, a way to do that, and stick that landing, then, you know, whatever else people want to say about me, we'll be the people who helped fix Hawkman, you know? And so we basically laid it all out there in the first issue. And we knew going in, either people are going to love this, because it was a lot of what you said. I had come off writing Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, which had Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, John Stewart, Kyle Rayner, all in the same book.
Right.
And those fan bases all hate each other's guts. You know? So I didn't want to get into the Carter Hall, Katar Hall, everybody hates each other's thing again. I was like, let's find a way where we can make, no matter what you think or what Hawkman you read, this is your Hawkman.
That's right.
And if we can get people to buy into that, then that'll be awesome. But also, they could just as well hate our guts, and we're sunk right from the beginning, you know? And on that first day when it came out, and the first responses started to hit, you know, Brian and I were changing emails because he lives in England, and it was almost like, the things people were saying was almost like incredulity. Like, how did these guys fix it? By just adding and space, and suddenly the whole thing makes sense, you know? And it was a great feeling because we both, Brian especially, he has such a love, such a history with these characters, you know? And so for us to be able to have that reaction and be like, you know, I can't believe it, you know, they actually bought into it. And then it was just off to the races from there, and it just becomes so fun and so big. And you know, there was a microverse Hawkman, and now instead of, you know, the Atom being a little guy and Hawkman is the big guy, you know, it's the reverse, and the Atom's the giant, and Hawkman's the little guy. Just whatever we could throw at it. You know, the issue 4, Mike, if you read it, I mean, it's clearly a love letter to Hawkworld.
Oh,
you know, like
absolutely.
The Calmoran statue, and Tempest, and like those 3 issues of Hawkworld, you can see.
You made my day.
You know, and Brian has such a love for that as well, you know, and so we really went in there and just and took all the fun and all the adventure and all the heroism of all these different iterations of characters. Something was all on the table because people have bought into Ant Space. And so now nothing is off limits. And,
Can I ask a question? I'm not
yeah,
trying to
no, go
interrupt
for
you,
it.
but this is directed at you with this. And here's, because we're doing this and, you know, your book was running within the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
They give you a character, or you pitch your idea. What pressures do you feel? Is there pressure from DC? This time we need it to be a hit, or you feel, because I mean, most times when you get a character that had, like when I was on Shazam, there was no history of Shazam being really successful since the 1970s relaunch. And there's a kind of a feeling among editorial that you're kind of on your own. You know what I mean? You can come up with your great ideas, and like, I mean, it's really impressive that you would weave all of it together. But I mean, from an editorial's point of view, did they say, yeah, but you know, we need to hit this, or we finally need to sell this thing? Can you do this in this issue? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I haven't been involved.
Yeah, my impression of the situation, and I don't know, I'm just going from my end of the conversation, right? I'm not in the editorial meetings over there or whatever, you know. My impression of the situation was that Hawkman had been used to some extent in the Death Metal series, which was very popular. And so we're like, well, what if we try to do something with Hawkman then? We have no idea what to do with it, you know, what are your ideas? The only idea I have was the Ant Space thing. And I was so excited about it, and if they had said, no, we don't want to do that, I would have said, well, I got nothing, you know, pass. I think they'd had some other writers turn in some pitches for Hawkman, and I don't know who those writers were, what those pitches were, but they didn't work out the way they wanted. They liked the Ant Space thing, and so they wanted to go with it. But I don't know that I ever felt like, and this is again just me, my opinion, I don't know if they ever felt like there was this pressure to have sales, beyond everything having a pressure to have sales, because it wasn't like they put a lot behind it, you know? I mean, all the support that we got, and all the people talking about the book and whatever, it was all just grassroots.
Yeah,
I think there was like a house ad.
There was a tremendous amount on Twitter.
Right,
People,
yeah.
There was a couple guys who were ultimate Hawkman fans trying to save the book and all this stuff.
Sure, yeah.
The reason I ask it is because, like, when Mike was doing the Hawkworld stuff, Mike used his currency, basically your editorial currency. He pushed this stuff, and I think that doesn't exist nowadays in that same way. Because
And that's the reason why.
a lot of things are happening
Because
above
you
the
didn't-
individual editors, you know.
Because that was a pain in the ass.
But I
It was
mean,
even-
it's the idea of having an editor who's maybe got enough pull within that company to push for stuff and maybe to, that's what I'm saying. I mean, because
I mean,
my
I don't
experience
know
with
what
it.
has pulled it isn't Batman, to be honest with you.
Well, but I wonder if there's, again, this is a change in the company, and we're talking about a character who's been around since the 40s, is that each generation of like a company and being with the personnel, the structure of DC is very different than it used to be, in that editors used to be the guys who ran those books, and then it got to a point where the editors were almost like, you know, Dan DiDio or whoever would hand down, here's what you're doing, here's the...
Yeah, so,
But the big decisions existed above the editor, which you would
Yeah.
then not have somebody who could really go to bat for you and say, Robert really wants to do this, oh no, we have to cross over.
so
into something.
there were definitely, like, the infection crossover. or whatever.
Right, right.
That came from up top.
Right.
You know, and again, it was puzzle pieces. I had
And you
to
gotta
figure
play
out how to
along
fix,
because
yeah.
that's part of the market.
But I could definitely say that there were certain things I wanted to do in the series. And the 2 primary editors I have on the book were Andrew Moreno, who did the first half, most of the first half, and then Andre Shea, who did most of the second half. And both of them definitely went in. I mean, it was a fight for me to get to be able to do the Hawkman and Adam issue, double issue. Right? Like, the Adam doesn't sell, and we don't want to go to the microverse or
Right,
whatever.
right.
And I was like, man, you're telling me I can't have Hawkman because you can't use it elsewhere. Like, I have to be able to use some supporting cast,
Right,
you know?
right.
And I promise you, we're gonna do something cool with it, you know? Like
Yeah.
Brian Hitch trying to John Adam, right?
Right.
And so, like, I had, go for that, but the editors always supported me in those things. And using the JSA that we talked about, fighting to finally get Hawkwoman to join the series, which I've been trying to do for so long, and allowing us to take almost more of a romance bent with it, once we were able to do that, you know. That was all editorial going in and fighting for that.
That's good.
Taking ownership of the book, because they like what we were doing too.
But see, that's an important part of it. I mean, I don't see that in, I've not been working on stuff regularly, and I'm not haven't been involved in any executive level stuff. But it feels like as a creator, it'd be really hard to work in a situation where you didn't feel you had some support.
No, they were,
I guess the basic thing, all the good editors supported the creators.
Yeah.
And could fight, like in the old days, you'd take something to Dick or Jeanette Kahn, or later on to McFarlane or whatever. There was always that sense that you could feel like if you wanted to do this story, no one would say, well, we'd rather you do, you know, Hawkman killing somebody.
Sure.
You know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
I've definitely had experiences like that in my career in various places, but to speak to Hawkman specifically, I mean, I'd share a foxhole with Andrew or Andrea anytime.
That's
you know.
good. Yeah,
And they were young too, very good, young, strong editors, which is not easy to find.
Yeah, because I work with people who were really pushed around, like during that period, like 2008, 9 through, you know, early 2012, 2013. A lot of guys that would get pushed around because something was made a decision above their head that nobody told the editor, but then they have to change stuff.
Sure,
or they
yeah.
have to, and it always felt like, you know, if you're going to dictate from there, then you should have a better plan or a
Yeah.
better, you know, outline of what's going to happen.
Right.
But the current group of titles from DC, I think this is probably true of Marvel as well, the larger publishers, that bar, that sales bar we were talking about, has been lowered because sales are lower.
Yeah.
It's going back up, which is nice, but it's still, comparatively speaking, fairly low. And the sales, the importance of sales became in the aggregate, total line sales. You know, because they were all getting printed, the economy of